Remember, we are, let me get this back up here again. Remember, we're talking about the finishing work of the seventh messenger, number 4, the need for the tribulation. As we see, the word need, of course, means needful or necessary. The refers to the definite article of the tribulation, because it's one, like Yeshua said, has never been since the time of mankind was even been created. The time is this. And of course it means, tribulation means pressure, affliction, anguish, burdens, persecution, and trouble. Okay? Just keep those things in mind, because that's the things that we face every day, isn't it? Troubles, troubles, troubles. Okay, let's go to... let's see, we left off on page 152 here. We covered last week, we ended with the fact that Yeshua, Satan, who was Yahweh's wife, of course, as it showed in Yekeskia, she committed adultery, but she's going to find her rest. And as it says in verse 18, about the middle of that verse where it's highlighted, it talks about how she wanders up and down on the face of the earth. Of course, now she's been cast down to earth, so she no longer can do that. And we said highlight this part where it says she's barred from heaven now, but she's still wandering up and down in the earth, trying to find some sort of peace or satisfaction that she should have learned in keeping Yahweh's laws. Now, has she done that, then, of course, she wouldn't be described as that roaring lion seeking whom she can devour, right? In 1 Kepha 5, verse 8. She would actually have peace, because peace only comes in Yahweh's laws. But she hasn't found that. So as he says, Yahweh says she will find her rest in that place, and names the place and the time she's going to die. Because she's going to come to an end, you know. Her end is near. He says, I brought that in the Middle East sermons. That's old sermons. Now, verse 19, highlight that part where it says, Yahweh could not convince them in words. Of course, he's talking about the demons here, okay, the gods that follow her. Highlight this part. Yahweh could not convince them in words that if they did not do these things, they would bring peace, long life, and joy to their lives. He could not convince them of this, so he created mankind. He set before them a movie acted out by mankind, and he made promises to mankind. End of highlight there. Okay? So he you know, Psalms 82 describes that, how he speaks to them. And you see here in Psalms 82, verse 1 and 6, he stands in the assembly of the gods, and he gives them judgment among the gods. You know, he's always teaching his judgments. He's teaching them. Even though they're not listening, they won't turn, he still teaches them so that they would know the right and proper way. He says, I have said you are gods, you sons of the Most High. You know, they should be called sons of the Most High, but instead they choose to be known as gods instead of the great sons of Yahweh. Now, that word assembly, the assembly of the gods, okay, that's a heavenly court composed of the original sons of Yahweh, of course, who are now known as gods. As he says in verse 6, you are gods. But the gods, you know, this is from the 2006 Prophetic Word magazine, a quote here, and he says, there are many beings in the universe who do the will of Yahweh. However, all are not perfect. In fact, there is misery and unjust treatment among many beings who will not humble themselves in obedience to Yahweh. These beings are called gods and angels. Although Yahweh counsels the gods and angels to do righteousness, these beings have free moral agency at this time. These beings also have a character of righteousness and evil. And as we know, righteousness and evil does not mix, right? You have to be made into the image of likeness. And that's what Yahweh is trying to do with mankind. And that's why he has the prophecies and his plan of calling out those to become made into his image and likeness, to be a part of his family. Okay, so continuing on here, he says, he didn't just do this as if they were animals fit for the slaughter. He's talking about these gods, okay, the sons of the Most High, the gods, as he teaches them and so forth. He said he didn't just do this as if they were animals fit for the slaughter, as one of the apostles said, and ready to die at the end of it. He actually is going to form man in his own image during the same time period. So while these gods have full reign of the earth, as they've been cast to this earth along, with Satan, and they influence mankind, he's setting before the universe a movie of what's going on in our lives, okay? And as he says, he's actually going to form man in his own image during the same time. Can you imagine Yahweh saying, behold, look at these puny little insignificant little beings. The scripture says, what is man that you're even mindful of this? And they're just a bunch of little floppy dops over here that just mess up their lives entirely. Look at it. They live in sin and everything. You consider that as being something that we should be looking at? And he says, just wait. I'm not finished yet. At the end, they're going to come out in my image and likeness. And that's what he's doing in these last days. He's putting on the finishing touches, remember, on his people in these last days and bringing us to that perfection that he desires. So his whole reputation is based on the house of Yahweh, how we overcome. That word image, in Strong's, it's number 6754, it means resemblance, hence a representative figure, okay? Now, in Hebrews 1:3, we see that representative figure of Yeshua. It says, who being the reflection of the perfection of Yahweh and the representation of Yahweh's plan, okay? So he was that resemblance. He was the first one to be made into the image of Yahweh. A Hebrew and Chaldee lexicon by Julius First on page 1192 says this word means of a son having the likeness of his father. Also mentally, in the same mind, with the likeness of his father. Remember Yachanaan 10:30 said, Yeshua said, I and my Father are in one accord, okay? And of course, mentally, Yeshua's thoughts were guided by sacred spirit, and he always did the will of Yahweh. That's how he could say, if you have seen me, Philip, you have seen the Father, right? So he was of one mind. He's always been of one mind with Yahweh, okay? And of course, the reference scriptures here is in Matthew 19:17. But he said to them, why do you question me about righteousness? This is Yeshua speaking, and he says, there's only one who is the standard of perfection. And of course, that's Yahweh. So if you would enter into life, then of course, keep his commandments, keep his laws. 1 Yachanaan 3:2, beloved, now we are the children of Yahweh, but it has not yet been revealed what we will be. But we know that when he is revealed, we will be like him, for we will see Yahweh as he is. Think of that. As he is. We're going to see Yahweh in his full glory. Matthew 5:48, therefore become perfect, just as your Father who is in heaven is perfect. And we see example of that, of course, in Genesis 17:1, when Abraham was 99 years old, Yahweh appeared to Abraham and said, I am Yahweh, walk in my ways and be perfect. And he was. He proved to be perfect. He proved to be that. And that's why he's called the father of the faith, right? That's why Abraham has such a great testimony. And he was actually called the friend of Yahweh. The friend of Yahweh. Okay. So in verse 20 here, he says, Yahweh set before them the way of life. And he said, I'm going to call certain ones. He will have 7 different works that he showed. He said, I brought that out 2 days ago. Okay, so he says, he would have 7 works on earth, and then there will be no more. He's, because 7 is the number of completion. Once it's completed, this is the completing work. This is the final finishing work of Yahweh's great plan in his 7th era at this time. I like this next 2 sentences. He says he will not have a work unless it is prophesied. The 7 works are it. Okay? The 7 works are it. I like that part. Now, this should immediately bring to mind, of course, that's a reference scripture as well. Moshe 3:7. He says, most assuredly, Father Yahweh will have no work other than the work that he has prophesied in advance. That's his plan by his servants, the prophets. Now, the New International Version, Interlinear Hebrew English Old Testament by Kohlenberger, in Volume 4, Zonovan Publishing, makes Amos 3:7 even more clearer, because you see here where he says, anything Yahweh, surely not not surely he does, sovereign Yahweh, anything, except if he reveals the plan of him, notice, to him, servants of his, the prophets. Okay, so you can see that he's talking about the plan of Yahweh. He doesn't do anything unless he reveals his plan. So it's his plan for mankind to become perfected beings. And this is what Yahweh is working with his house in these last days and doing, bringing these finishing touches upon us in these last days. So getting back to the book here, notice he says, we are the finishing work. We will finish this thing off. We will raise the dead. We will raise our brothers and sisters who have died in the same faith to life, and they will join us in the rebuilding of earth and the universe. That is going to be something else. Everything I'm saying here, he said, is revealed in the Holy Scriptures in detail. So he says, look at Psalm 8, verse 5. For you have made, he says, that is mankind, a little lower than the Malachim. I like that. We just made just a little bit lower than the Malachim. That's why Yahweh looks at us. You know how powerful a Malach is? They could destroy, one Malach could destroy this house of Yahweh and half this earth. You know, the power they have. But Yahweh, he says, mankind's made just a little lower than the Malachim. That word little lower, it actually refers to want or something that's lessen or lack, okay? We lack something, okay, right now. But, as he says, but you have crowned him with glory and honor. And remember, Yahweh speaks as though things are already done, okay? So he's going to crown us with glory and with honor. And in verse 1, it says, how excellent is your great name or your great plan. Your great plan that you have planned here to fulfill. This name, of course, covers authority. It means power. It means character. It means many, many different things in the word name. But he says, in all the earth. He says he's going to bring this about in all the earth. In Yahweh, our Heavenly Father, you have your glory firmly set above this starry frame, the heavens. Of course, that's his name. That's his laws. Remember, Yahweh's glory is known among the heavens. Okay? His name and his laws are known. And if you remember, Yahweh said his strength is in this. Remember the laws of Yahweh, keeping those laws of Yahweh, that's our strength. And his glory is his laws, his name and his strength. In verse 2, he says, from the mouths of babes and sucklings. You know, he takes the little ones, the little ones that have to depend upon someone else to survive. Okay, a baby can't pick up a fork and eat, right? It can't go cook something in the kitchen. It depends upon the parents to take care of it so it can survive. From the mouth of babes and sucklings, and that's the way Yahweh looks upon us. Remember, we start off with the milk of Yahweh's word, and then we feed. And as we grow, then we can start taking in more and more food until eventually, as the Apostle Shalom said, you got to put away the milk. And now you got to go after the meat, okay? The deeper things of Yahweh's ways. He says, I suppose we have seen we seem like such a bunch of stupid jerks to Satan and all the Malachim who are much more intelligent and stronger than we are. But notice, they're suffering the same as mankind is, okay? So the sickness and the diseases and the things that we see on this earth, they're suffering the very same things. Because remember, mankind was influenced by their actions. They did it, and then mankind followed suit. Because they chose the way of the gods. Okay? And they follow those examples. They're going downhill while Yahweh's house started at the bottom, and we're coming up. Okay? We're rising up. Praise Yahweh. In verse 24, he says, from the mouths of babes and sucklings, now, strength by you is ordained. That's one of our vocabulary words, if you remember. Strength by you is ordained. That is authority and the power to carry it out, the same as Yahweh has. Okay, so that's one of the vocabulary words or phrase. Strength by you is ordained. That means authority and power to carry it out the same as Yahweh has. Okay? So you would steal your enemies. That is in his plan to steal his enemies. He has enemies in heaven, but he's built a fort around himself in Yahweh Shema that can't be penetrated by bombs or any other power or blown away. It's made to where they cannot destroy it. I'm sure some of them would like to, because he has more power and authority than they do. And of course, they're jealous at him. You know, they would love to destroy Yahweh's home base, so to speak, you know, because that way they would think that his whole kingdom would crumble down. But those who do not want to turn try to fight and find a way to fight and destroy. And this is in them because it has, notice, it's deteriorated their minds as it does mankind's minds. Okay, these diseases, these STDs that are in the heavens and stuff, it's, you know, and they have found it in the heavens. They found it in space. They know that. But it's deteriorated their minds, just like mankind's minds are being deteriorated at this time. And hatred, bitterness, and fightings are a part of their way of life. And remember what it says here in 1 Achanan 2, 7 and 11. It says, brothers, I write no new laws to you, but the old laws which you had from the beginning. The old laws of the word which you had from the beginning. But he who hates his brother is in darkness and walks in darkness and does not know where he is going, because that darkness has blinded his minds. And of course, the eyes are the index to the mind, you know. Blinded. That word is number 5186 according to Thayer's. It means to blunt the mental discernment and to darken the mind. The Greek English lexicon by Lindell, Scott, and Jones says it means to inflict a blinding wound, to blind, to baffle. You think of confusion there. To make blind or without passage. Notice it's stopped up. Okay, it's as it says, make it to cease to yield milk. Like we were talking about. 1 Kepha 2:2, as newborn babes long for the sincere milk of the word, by which you might grow in towards salvation. Notice, it's without passage. It stops up. It ceases to yield milk. It's a passage. It's stopped up. It ceases so that you can't take in the word of Yahweh. And that's what blinding of the minds does. It stops a person from growing spiritually. Okay? And so that hatred and that bitterness grows within them. So returning back to the book here, he says, it's part of their brain's makeup and the computers that they have, like you do also, that make your body work. He says, if you don't have those sermons, then you need them, he says. Listen to them and see how Yahweh designed your body, because he says we have trillions of computers in our bodies. He says, I brought that out in detail, how they work and how they're fed. I brought out in the sermon how there's certain ones in the land of Israel who have actually taken DNA from the body and created a computer that is DNA powered. And that thing is thousands of times faster than anything on the market that would be available soon if the technology or the manufacturing comes through. It'll be available soon in the United States. Okay? And we know that they are working on this, and the big major companies, of course, are working. But DNA computing, it says the performing of computations using biological molecules. Okay, now we're talking about molecules. Remember what a molecule is? It's made up of atoms. It's a group of atoms. That's how small this is. And that's what DNA is. DNA is a molecule. It's made up of atoms. That's how tiny this thing is. It's amazing how they were actually able to discover DNA and actually see that it, even down to the microscopic level of how it's like a twisted ladder, you know? It's amazing. But it's a biological molecules rather than the traditional silicon chips. The idea that individual molecules or even atoms could be used for computation dates to 1959 when American physicist Richard Feynman presented his ideas on nanotechnology. Nanotechnology, nano is very, very small. You're talking about tiny, 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 millions of an inch and so forth. However, DNA technology was not physically realized until 1994, when American computer scientist Leonard Abelin showed how molecules could be used to solve a computational problem. Molecules. Now remember, molecules, DNA, it's in us. And that's what he just said here. He says, remember, in verse 26 here, he says, we have this ability in our bodies. We have it in our bodies, okay, this DNA. We have this ability. This is how we're able to function. And these things are taking place even as we speak. You know, millions and billions of computations are being made continuously. And that's how our bodies are operating right now, because our body is like an operating system, you know. And this is what we will inherit very soon, he says, very soon. Now, if you remember Ephesians 3, verses 14, he says, for this reason I bow my knees to Yahweh, the Father of the King, Yeshua Messiah, of whom the whole family in heaven and earth is named, that he would grant to you to the riches of his glory and be strengthened with power through his Spirit in your inner being. Your inner being, notice. Now to him who is able to do immensely above all that we ask or think, according to his power that is at work within us. Okay, we have that power. That power is at work within us. Let's look at that word power quickly here. Because you see here where it says we're going to inherit this. The word power, according to Thayer's, is strength or ability. And remember, he just said we have this in verse 26. We have this ability in our bodies. And this is what we will inherit very soon. Keep that in mind, ability and inherit. Because you see here that this word power, it means an inherent power residing in a thing by virtue of its nature, or which a person or a thing exerts and puts forth. So it's an inherent power. Inherit means to receive from a parent or an ancestor by genetic transmission, and also it means to come into possession of or receive, especially as a right or a portion. Of course, it's a heavenly portion from Yahweh, because we've inherited the genes of Abraham, who's called the father of the faith. And of course, as a result of overcoming, we will inherit and possess the power and ability to be as Yahweh, as being made into his image and likeness. Because remember, Psalm 16 verse 5 says, Yahweh is our portion. Okay? Yahweh is our portion. So we're going to see him as he is, as we read earlier. And then in Ephesians, continue on in Ephesians 4, 21 and 25, he says, just look at verse 24 is what I really want to show, because it says that you put off the new man, which is being created, put on the new man, which is being created according to Yahweh in righteousness and true holiness, okay? The new man is being created, okay? And of course we know that, and we know, this also talks about the subconscious mind and stuff, but we know the fact that it's being created, and Yahweh is using the subconscious mind and is changing our DNA into what he wants us to become. So you can see how Yahweh can do this with our DNA and the way that he's made us, and can actually, he's already got this program written, okay? He's got the computer code, so to speak, already laid out, and that's in the book of Yahweh, okay? And as we become what is written in the book of Yahweh, we're actually allowing his program to take place within our bodies, within our DNA, to be made into the image and likeness of Yahweh himself. So continue on here in verse 26. He says, we have this ability in our bodies, and that's what we will inherit very soon now. Starting next year, when it would be very needful for us to achieve some of this power and knowledge that we don't have right now. There is scientific power that you have probably seen a lot in science books, even though the teachers don't understand it, but you will. Most of it would come from these scriptures right here. He says, I've told you before, and I pointed things out to the doctors that they didn't know about. When they went back and started hunting for it, they found that I was right on these things. They were somewhat amazed that this came from the scriptures that were written thousands of years ago. You remember when Yeshua talked about the key of knowledge? Remember? He said about the key of knowledge in Luke 11:52, I think it is. He talked about the key of knowledge, and he was talking to the teachers of the law. They had taken the key of knowledge away. When Proverbs 1:7 says the reverence of Yahweh is the beginning of wisdom, okay? It's the beginning of the chief part of knowledge, reverencing Yahweh. So Yahweh's word is the source of all knowledge. So when you worship him, then a whole new part of your understanding awakens with your spiritual mind that contains everything you learn. All of your subconscious mind, it goes in. The more you know and you practice, the closer you become to Yahweh. As it is written, he who practices righteousness is righteous just as he is. Okay? So as you become, we're actually becoming more and more like Yahweh himself. So he says they were amazed that this was written. It was written thousands of years ago. Yahweh already had it. So he continues here in Psalm 8, verse 3. I'd highlight this part. Verse 3, when we consider your heavens, the work of your fingers framed, the work of the moon and of the stars by which you ordained, Yahweh ordained all of these for mankind. Okay, so highlight that whole thing there. Verse 3, when we consider your heavens, the work of your fingers framed, the work of the moon and the stars, which were by you ordained, Yahweh ordained all of these things for mankind. He made this for mankind. A couple of words here we want to look at. The word consider, when he says, when we consider your heavens, okay? The word consider is number 7200. It means to see, so as to learn to know, okay? To learn to know, to perceive, to look after, to see after, to learn about, to observe and to watch, okay? So when we consider these things and we learn more about these things and see them, we see the glory of Yahweh. He says, what your fingers have framed, okay? That word fingers actually represents the power or absolute authority of Yahweh, as we read in Luke 11:20. But if I with the finger of Yahweh, this is Yeshua speaking, but if I with the finger of Yahweh cast out demons, no doubt the kingdom of Yahweh has come upon you, okay? So that's speaking definitely about the power of Yahweh. And the moons and the stars which you have ordained are actually prepared for various uses to the earth. Remember, everything was made for the earth and for mankind, the inhabitants of it. And, of course, the sun's not mentioned because you can't look upon the moon and the stars and see the sun at the same time from earth. So this includes all the heavens that's prepared for the earth to exist for mankind, all the things that we see. So this is what he was amazed about when he looked up and he saw these things. And it brought to mind the power and the glory of Yahweh. So continue on here in verse 28. He says, this is not the only verse that mentions why the earth was made. It was made before mankind, but the plan for mankind was before the earth was made. So before the earth was made, he already had in his plan to make mankind. So before Yahweh actually formed the earth, he had it in his plan. He had actually already tested it out in his lab. He has the most beautiful lab you could ever imagine. He does all kinds of testings and creates more things than you could ever imagine. And when you think about all the work that Yahweh did in bringing all these things to perfection and experimentations that he did to make sure that everything was perfect. That's why when you read in Genesis 1, when it says, after everything that he created, what does he say? He looked upon it and it was right. It was perfect, just exactly the way that he had made it, okay? And so he worked on these things long, long ago, and then he brought it all to pass. So he does all these things in testings and creates more things than we could ever imagine. Verse 29, he says, you cannot see it with your eyes, but he has created these things for mankind. That makes me think about what it says here in Colossians 1, 15 and 16, because he says, he's the image of the invisible Father, the firstborn of all that Yahweh is creating, talking about Yeshua. Because before him all things were created that are in heaven and that are in earth, visible and invisible, whether thrones, rulerships, or principalities, or powers, all things were created on account of Yeshua and for him, okay, because he's going to be crowned King of Kings. Now you notice it says in heaven and in earth. That word in is two different words. But the word in heaven is a primary preposition denoting a fixed position in place, time, or state, and it means instrumentality. In other words, the heavens were instrumental in this creation. And you see in earth, where it says, this is number 1909, it means of that which anything is sustained or withheld to sustain life by a thing, okay? So the life, the things that are in the earth, okay, the microbes and various things that make up the earth is there. And they're made there to sustain life, to hold it all together, and everything is upheld by the laws of Yahweh, which keeps everything in its own original place and functioning properly, okay? So he says, back in the book, he says, he placed the planets that surround the earth. We are way out on one end of the Milky Way. We're out away from the center of the universe. We're almost hidden from the universe in a way of distance. He put us that way for a purpose. He put a boundary between us and those who would like to destroy us. Here's some interesting information here. The scientists estimate that there could be tens of billions of solar systems in our galaxy, as many as 100 billion. That's a solar system now. When the solar system means a sun with planets revolving around it. That's how vast it is. The Milky Way contains over 200 billion stars and enough dust and gas to make billions more. The solar system lies about 30,000 light years from the galactic center and about 20 light years above the plane of the galaxy. Earth and its neighbors don't orbit within the plane of the galaxy, but instead are tipped about 63 degrees. It's almost like sailing through the galaxy sideways. That's why when you look at you see the pictures of the Milky Way, it's slanted, right? 63 degrees. So I thought, 63, what does 63 mean? Wouldn't you know Yahweh would come through, wouldn't you? Look at number 63 in Greek. To live in the fields, to be under the open sky, even by night. I thought, whoa. I thought, now Yahweh thought about all this stuff, and he inspired us for Thayers to put that in his Greek lexicon back almost 200 years ago, whatever, 100-something years ago. And then he knew that this exact day, that would be looked up and found, to match with exactly what's being said here in this book. It's astounding the way Yahweh works. Okay. So let's go on here. He says, so he put us there for a purpose. He put a boundary between us and those who would like to destroy us. Verse 30, he says, there's powerful angels who would like to destroy us. They are somewhat limited to what they can do in traveling that distance. Oh, that distance. You remember now it said here that we were, go back to this right here. If you notice, the solar system lies 30,000 light years from the center of the universe. 30,000 light years. Now, a light year, okay, you know how fast light travels. 1 light year is the distance of 6 trillion miles. Now, the solar system lies, our solar system, where we live, lies 30,000 light years from the center of the galaxy. Measure 30,000 times 6 trillion miles. That's more than a tank of gas is going to take you to get there, right? So that's how big it is. And then notice, Life Science, it says, several studies have indicated that the Milky Way and its neighbors are living out in the boonies of the cosmos. From afar, the large-scale structure of the universe looks like a colossal cosmic web with string-like filaments connecting dense regions connected by enormous, mostly empty voids. And that's exactly where you see it. It looks like a big spider web if you've ever seen pictures of these connections. What's out there, the galaxies. Last year, a separate team looked at the motion of the galaxies in the cosmic web to provide additional confirmation that we're floating in one of those big, empty areas. So I thought that was interesting for the fact that, like he says, we're put out there in the boonies, and they're limited by the vast amount of distance, and the way that we're put out there, it's kind of like Yahweh has hidden us in a certain portion of the universe, so that we would not be bothered. And so that's what he says here in verse 30. There's powerful angels who would like to destroy us, but they're somewhat limited to what they can do in traveling that distance. They would not be allowed to. They are under control by to some extent, and their way can be made forth. Their way can be brought forth to mankind. Okay, because they can influence us. Now, highlight these next sentences. He says, they could also wipe us out if Yahweh allowed it. They could destroy us at any time they wanted to, because they have that power. They know they are limited, though. They have Malachim set over them who would not allow them to touch, breed, mix, or cause anything to bother Yahweh's house or his people at this time in any way. Okay? Highlight all of that. Because you see here, and now you might think, well, they've done it and stuff. Well, yes, with UFOs, there's a lot of UFOs reports and stuff and experimentations that have been done. But notice, it's not about anyone in Yahweh's house. They won't bother you. They can't. They're forbidden to bother you. Okay? And, we've had experiences even around here and stuff, where UFOs and stuff have come and so forth, and people have seen things. They've come right up to the border, right up to the edge of the property, but they can't get on the clicker. They can't come any closer. They can't bother Yahweh's people. So he says, I'm talking about changing your DNA. Okay, they can't touch, mix, or cause anything to bother Yahweh's house or his people in any way. He says, I'm talking about changing your DNA, because that's what they'd like to know. They would like to know how to change and manipulate the DNA of mankind. If they could do that, they could undo everything that Yahweh has already done with man, right? All the changing that Yahweh has done within our DNA, they could reverse engineer that and take it out of us and get rid of it. And of course, they would be successful in destroying mankind, and mankind would never be able to be made into the image of likeness of Yahweh. And that's what they would like to do. It says, I'm talking about changing your DNA, your minds, or anything like this. These things are guarded to where they cannot change them. They're not allowed to touch them. Okay? This is why you never have to worry about being demon-possessed in Yahweh's house. Okay? Because the demons we're off limits. They can't touch us. Okay? Now, verse 31, highlight all of this. He says, starting here where he says, when we consider this, what your hands have made, and what man is that you are mindful of him. Yes, very mindful of him. He is Yahweh's means of enlarging his kingdom to the point that where he can actually bring peace to the entire universe and put his trust in us, knowing that we will never be offended. Okay? All that should be highlighted. So as he says here, remember Psalms, for reference, remember Psalms 119, 165, great peace have they who love your law. Okay? And then also in Luke 7:23, Yeshua said, don't be offended by what I say or do. Okay? So as he says here, we have to pass that point to where we will not be offended. We have to pass that point in righteousness. I would suggest that you underline that and even print it out. Put it up where you can see it and read it. Think about it. We have to pass that point to where we will not be offended. Why do you get upset? Because someone offends you. Some situation comes about and it offends us. We've got to get past that point, he says. That's a deep, deep thought when you think about really what he's saying there. So we have to get that point in righteousness, he says. I think 99% of you are right there, right now. Some of you cannot even know it. You might not even know it, but I think you are, he says, and seeing the results I see at this feast. And remember, keeping our appointments with Yahweh at the feast draws us closer to him. And so we become more and more like Yahweh every time we meet with him. And even on his Sabbath days, that's why he gives us these things, so we can meet with him. Now, in order for Yahweh to meet with us, we've got to be a people who are prepared to meet with our Creator. Otherwise, he wouldn't do it. But remember, it says his ears and his eyes, his heart is here with us, and it will be at the house of Yahweh perpetually. That's forever, he says. But if we haven't met that standard, of course, he wouldn't be here with us. But that's a promise that he is here with us every Sabbath day and at his feast as we become closer and closer to him. because he's eagerly awaiting as well. He wants his family to come to perfection and get to that state to where he can claim them and show us off to the universe, Yahweh's he's not a prideful being, but he's very well pleased. And he's going to say, these are my sons, these are my daughters. Like any parent would do, to show this is my son or this is my daughter. They're well pleased with them and what they do. Verse 32. And the Son of Man that you have visited him, for you have made him a little lower than the Malachim, but you will crown him with glory and honor. Very soon, that is at the end of the 3.5-year period, then we will receive this great authority when we'll have to start judging and ruling the Malachim ourselves. And notice this sentence. We will be using them and breeding more for our use. We will be using them in breeding. He's talking about the Malachim. Because remember, we will have authority over all creation. Over mankind will have authority over everything that Yahweh has created. Except Yahweh's own family, of course. And these Malachims are created beings. So they were made to help us to get our certain jobs done in the universe. So we're actually going to be using them, and we're going to be breeding more. We're going to allow them to have more families and so forth. If we're going to need more help in a certain area, we're going to allow more Malachim to breed so that we can have a greater amount of Malachim to help us. Verse 33 says, you made man to be ruler of the works of your hands. And it says, look back at verse 3. Everything your fingers have framed, the works of the moon and the stars, which you have ordained. Then here in verse 6, you made man to be the ruler over the works of your hands. Now, of course, that includes the Malachim, and that's why he said that we would be using and breeding more Malachim to help us. You will put all things under his feet, all sheep, oxen, all the fowls of the air, all the microbes in the air and the earth and so forth. How excellent is this great plan of yours, in verse 9, he says. He says, let's turn over to Hebrews. One of the apostles was inspired to expound on this right here. He says, it first started in Genesis where Yahweh says, I will make man in my image and after my likeness, and then I will give him great authority. Psalm shows how great this authority is ruling over everything in Yahweh's hands, that Yahweh's hand is made, Now highlight this sentence. That is what we are created for, to assist him in bringing peace to the entire universe. That's why Yahweh made us. He created us so we can assist him in bringing forth peace to the universe. Hebrews 2:7, it says, you made him a little lower than the Malachim. It just cracks me up every time I think of that. We just made just a little bit lower, just a little bit lower than the Malachim. But you crown him with glory and with honor. Because remember, he speaks as though things are already done. You did set him over the works of your hands. We're not yet, but we are set over the works of his hands in his plan. But we're not yet so set over the works of his hands at this moment, but we're going to be, We will be. Verse 5. It's not to the Malachim that he is subjected, that is, or ordained, the world to come, about which we're speaking of. It's not to the Malachim. This is why Yeshua could never be a Malach. This is why the stupid Christian teaching of thinking that Jesus was Michael the Archangel is so ridiculous. If they would just read what the Scripture says, because when he talks about Yeshua, it says, which one of the Malachim has he ever spoken of in this manner? To none. He's never made this promise to any. So it also throws out the Jehovah's Witness too. But he says, the world to come about which we are speaking, for one testifies in a certain place, what is man? What is it about mankind, this lowly little creation? What is it about man that you even think about him? This word man is number 582. It's from 605, and it probably means a mortal. And notice it says, differing from the more dignified number 120, which is Adam, hence a man in general, Notice it comes from 605, which means to be frail, to be feeble, to be desperately wicked, like the heart of mankind is, right? incurable, sick, woeful. Okay, so the heavenly beings, they know that mankind has come short of the glory of Yahweh, as it says in Romans, but Yahweh knows that he's not yet finished working with mankind. He's going to bring them to perfection. Okay, and so that's why it says, what is man that you're even mindful of him? You know, they stand in awe of the fact of Yahweh's plan. Getting back to the book here, he says, we just read that in Psalms, that you are mindful of man and the Son of Man that you visit him. You made him a little lower than the Malachim. You crowned him with glory and with honor, and you did set him over the works of your hands. And of course, Psalm shows the moon, the stars, and the universe and everything. All that awaits us, okay? He says, I don't believe that Yahweh created everything in the universe. From what I see in the scriptures, there are certain Malachim or groups of them who had this power and knowledge, who created planets of their own. I do believe that it's run like an efficient city, to where you have to have permission to do it in a certain way and in a certain place and make it fit in with the rest of the clock that works out there. Otherwise, it would not last, okay? You know, Yahweh has allowed them to do these things, but remember, everything must be done with permission. We're going to have authority and the power to raise the dead. Will that power and authority be of our own? We will never have any power of our own that radiates from our own being, so to speak, you know, from our own makings. Everything comes from Yahweh. Remember, we will remain alive through the power of Yahweh, okay, by being obedient to Yahweh. Yahweh is the only source of power in the universe, okay? But he will use us and give us that power and allow us to use that power to be able to raise the dead and to be able to create planets and so forth and do all of these things. And so that's what he's talking about here, in the fact that he sees in the scriptures where there were other beings, other Malachims and groups of them who made things, created things, but everything has to be done decently and in order, remember. Everything has to be made just exactly where it's supposed to be to work in this clock. Like the universe is this giant clock, okay, and everything must work properly. If you get off one little space, if somebody doesn't go and get permission and does something on their own, is going to affect some other part of the universe. And that's what he's saying here. Otherwise, it wouldn't last. It would destroy other things. He said possibly some did it by breaking the governing laws, and this caused trouble by doing so. Okay? Nevertheless, he says, I do believe that that you will have the same power. You will have the power to create a planet of your own, or many planets of your own, if that is what you desire, and still do your work that Yahweh desires for you to do. So he says, you put all things in subjection under his feet, in verse 39 here. In putting everything in subjection under his feet, Yahweh left nothing that is not subject to him, except that Yahweh is created, except for his own household, of course. He created man to govern for him and with him, but he'll always be the head. Remember Yeshua said in Matthew 28:18, all authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me as the Son of Man. Okay, so we're going to have that power and authority, but we'll never be over Yahweh. We'll never rule Yahweh's house. Okay, even though we will be allowed to go into as his children to live in the house, the great Yahweh Shema, we will never enter into his personal quarters or talk to his family members and all this kind of stuff in any way. You know, we won't have any authority over them. That's his possessions, and he'll do what he wants to do with them, because that's his right as the creator, right? So we would be stepping over bounds. We would be trespassing if we did such a thing. So he continues on with the scriptures here. At this time, we do not see all things put under his feet. We see Yeshua, who was made a little lower than the Malachim, crowned with honor and with glory, because of him having lived the life that he lived, and also suffering death, in order that he, through the love of Yahweh, might test. Now highlight this next sentence. Remember, the love of Yahweh is the laws of Yahweh. Okay, it's the laws of Yahweh. Remember, that's a scriptural verse, 1 Yahweh 5, verse 3, that tells us that the laws of Yahweh is the love of Yahweh. 1 Yahweh 5, 3. Okay, so he says, continuing on, he says, that is the love he wants to create in you towards your fellow man and sisters. The love of Yahweh is keeping his laws, as 1 Yahweh 3 says. In verse 10 he says, "For it is fitting on him, on account of whom," he's talking about Yeshua, "on account of whom all things and through whom are all things, that he brings many sons to this authority." Notice, many sons to this authority of this rulership. It's fitting that he does this in order to bring peace to the universe where there is chaos now. Even the scientists see the chaos with their telescopes. They see the chaos in heaven that and they've even spoken about it. Okay? Here's, something about that. Astronomers once pictured the cosmos as an arena of calm, as planets moved serenely in their orbits around the stars, and stars orbited within galaxies, and the galaxies moved through galaxy clusters. But the past 4 decades, however, have revealed cosmic arenas of extreme violence. News about these violent locales reaches Earth in the form of high-energy X-ray and gamma-ray photons, typically created in enormous outbursts. Earth's atmosphere, of course, blocks all X-rays and gamma rays, protecting the Earth's surface. But the Chandra X-ray Observatory, launched in 1999, has yielded superbly detailed images of objects that generate copious amounts of X-rays. In many cases, these images reveal the sites of tremendous outbursts, such as supernovas, which is dying stars that blast hot gas into space at velocities of many thousands of miles per second. So you see, they're dying stars, okay? They know that things are dying out in the universe. Things are, and if a star and so forth dies out, that's a solar system, possibly a whole galaxy that just was destroyed. And there were beings that lived there, and they're being destroyed. Okay, so sin has reached its peak and has reached into the heavens, as the scripture says. And that's exactly what's taking place. And that's why they're looking forward to the revealing of the sons and daughters of Yahweh, because they want to be delivered. Okay, all creation is groaning at this time. And it's not just the microbes, but it's all these beings that's on these other planets and so forth. So verse 42, he says, "I brought that to you in sermons and have shown," highlight this part, "the gods were rebelling against Yahweh's laws. They're causing unrest there as well, just as their way causes unrest on earth, along with sickness, disease, and death. They have death there too, that they're bringing upon themselves." Okay, highlight all that part there. So as it says, Yahweh is making them the same promises that he makes you. Okay, we have that promise. In fact, this is interesting because you see here where it says, in Luke 19, 37 to 38, this is when Yeshua was going to enter into Jerusalem. And it says, "And when he came near to the descent of the Mount of Olives, the whole multitude of the disciples began to rejoice and to praise Yahweh with a loud voice for all the works of power they had seen, saying, 'Blessed is the King who comes in the name of Yahweh. Peace in heaven.'" Okay? Peace in heaven and glory in the highest. Now, then we talk about what's here on earth. Okay? But yet the same peace will be in the heavens at the same time. Because remember, Satan was cast down. Herman Kramer's lexicon reads this way, saying, "Blessed, celebrated with praise as the King who comes in the name of Yahweh. Peace in heaven. Freedom from there, from all distresses that are experienced as a result of sin." Okay? So when mankind is delivered from the sin, from the bondage of sin, as it talks about in Romans 8, the heavens will rejoice because of the fact that they've already seen Satan cast down to earth. Okay? So they know that she's limited in bothering them. But at the same time, they're looking forward to revealing of the sons and daughters of Yahweh, because then they're going to know for sure that they're going to experience peace wherever they are. Verse 42 here, back in the book, he says, "Now Yahweh is making it much plainer because he's created mankind. He allowed Satan to destroy or to deceive mankind, knowing that they were going to take place. He knew that the way of the Malachim and the angels were actually going to be lived because they would tempt mankind. Right now, Satan is still in hopes of destroying mankind. She's not allowed to do it herself, but she's allowed to teach certain things and to tempt them in certain ways. This is how she blinds the minds. Remember, we looked at the word blind, how it means the dulling of the mental capabilities of a person, okay, blinding their minds. So she's allowed to teach certain things and to tempt them in certain ways. And this is why it says about why is there wars and so forth? Because of the lust, okay, the lust and the power and so forth that people were desiring after, seeking the wrong way. You know, because if you seek power, okay, if that power is not going towards the love and the benefit of mankind, of your fellow man, showing forth the love towards your fellow man, then it's selfish power. And it's greed. And this is the way that the world is. They want power, but they don't want the power to help someone. They want the power to take things away from someone and take it all themselves. And of course, that's the God's way, okay, of teachings. So, verse 44 here, he says, you already have over 125 sexually transmitted diseases, many of which could destroy human life if the nuclear bombs did not beat them to it. You know, 125 is probably going up much higher than that now, but like he says, it would destroy human life if the nuclear bombs didn't beat it to it first. If nuclear war doesn't come first, the STDs would easily destroy mankind. That's how much mankind is messed up. That's how filthy and dirty the earth is. When it says the sins have reached into the heavens, well, in the heavens is where it's all going to start with the nuclear wars, and the elements will melt with fervent heat to destroy what's up there and eventually come down to the earth and destroy the earth. Remember, that's how the first nuclear bomb was described as fire in the heavens, right? Okay, he says, then you have the damage to each person's mind who partakes of this way of life. You have the same damage in the angels. If they weren't an iron ruling or limiting power that Yahweh uses to restrain the angels, they would have used that power that they could have had and probably did at one time. Highlight this next sentence here, two sentences. Satan's power was limited to a point. At one time she had the power to create and maintain flesh, but she lost it. Remember, that's in Genesis 3:14. Okay, Genesis 3:14. Her power was limited. At one time she had the power to create and maintain flesh. All of her sons did too. These were, that's the reason why we know and can be rest assured that we will be like Yahweh. We will have the power and authority because he gave some of this power and this authority to his original family, to his original sons and daughters there before they turned. And then they turned against him. And it's like we read in Psalms 8, he says, 82, he says, you sons of the Most High, you've made yourself into gods, but I'm still going to teach you. You're still going to hear my teachings, whether you accept it or not. And so he still continues to counsel with them and to teach them, to point out the error of their ways. That's the way Yahweh is. He doesn't give up on anything. And that's why he's never given up on you. He's never given up on the house of Yahweh. He knows that you're weak. As we saw, man, is weak and frail. He knows you're weak. He knows you're frail. He knows you fall. But he also says, get up. If it takes you 7 times a day, then get your tail up and keep on moving, keep going, right? Because he's not finished with us yet. He's still working with us. He's bringing us to perfection. And he will continue to do that, as the scripture says, it's up to us, unless we quench his spirit from working it within us. He will always work with us. He will continue to do that. So he says, this is revealed in Genesis. He says, I have a sermon on that too. And he talks about how the mailroom does an incredible job. In verse 46, verse 10, he says, it's needful for him to accomplish what he wants to accomplish. That's why it's got to be done according to Yahweh's will. For him to bring many sons to this authority. If Yahweh's will is not done, we would never come to perfection. His plan would never come to completion. That's why the title of this sermon is, it's needful for a tribulation to take place. Without it, the perfection cannot come. It's got to teach his lesson that he's trying to teach mankind and all the universe. He says, for him to come bring many sons to this authority, to have this power, this is exactly why mankind was created, for this purpose, to bring this peace to the universe. To bring this peace to the universe. That's the reason why we were created, to learn the ways of peace so that we could teach the ways of peace, right? Are we going to stop here for the night? Yahweh bless you.